Welcome back. Again, this is Father Brendan Helms, priest in charge of St. Monica's Anglican Church. In this session, we're going to be talking about the infinity of God. This is a doctrine that in some ways is very simple, but as we'll see, the conversation had in this session is going to lay the groundwork for many of the coming topics within this series. When you hear the word infinity, probably the very first thing that you begin thinking about is something related to mathematics. Maybe from when you were in high school, talked about the notion of infinity. But as we'll see here shortly, the doctrine of God being infinite in classical theism is very different than the concept of infinity in math. Or maybe if you're familiar with ancient philosophy, the notion of infinity and Zeno's paradox, which we're not going to spend the time getting into in this session. But to begin with, we'll add a very simple definition of the idea of God being infinite. In fact, the statement that God is infinite is actually not an affirmative statement, and that we're not actually saying something positive about God. And I don't mean positive in the sense of good or bad, but we're not making an affirmative statement about God. We're actually negating something about God. And in this case, we're negating that he is finite. So we would be helpful to think about the notion of being finite from the standpoint of our creaturely existence. As a human being, you are finite in the sense that you are in one place at one time. You're finite in the sense that you exist now. We can't exist both in the past, now, and in the future all at the same time. Time passes by for us. You certainly are finite in the sense of your knowledge. You're finite in the sense of your strength. You're finite in many different ways. So when we basically say that, when we make the statement that God is infinite, we are denying that God is finite in any sense whatsoever. So in the thinking of St. Thomas Aquinas, in Latin, this is the via negativa. We are negating things about God in this context. And as we'll see in the coming sessions related to the topic, these extensions, if you will, of God being infinite, we'll see that there are many different ways that when we deny that God has any sense of being finite, we'll see that it has significant ramifications for his knowledge, for the concept of God having a location, his power, the idea of God, whether he changes or not, and a whole host of others that we'll introduce in the coming sessions. But coming back to the idea of God being finite, of God being infinite, we will see that our first thing that we as humans probably do is we think of either that mathematical concept, or maybe we just think of God being just really, really big in some way. You know, this big, amazing, huge creature of some kind. But that is certainly not what we have in mind when we say that God is finite. Again, we have a really hard time as human beings thinking about the notion of infinity because we have no real way to think about it. We can't see that. There's nothing in our human world that is infinite in the way God is infinite. But what that should do for us is, once again, coming back to how we worship God in the liturgy and Holy Eucharist, is that because God is infinite and that he's not finite like you and me or any other creature, even angels for that matter, is that the only thing that is proper to him is worship. He is not like us in any way. Again, all of the aspects of you being finite as a human being, since we deny those of God, we come to a place of worshiping him in a way that is so utterly different that there's any type of relationship we would have with creatures. If we might even think about praying to the saints, or we might invoke prayer to angels, we shouldn't confuse that with what we do with God, because all of those beings are still finite. So we might invoke the saints to intercede to God on our behalf, but that's certainly fundamentally not what we do with God, because God is infinite. He's not finite in any manner whatsoever. So as we move forward over the next couple of sessions, when we begin to talk about ideas like God's omnipresence, his uh, all his knowledge, his power, his unchangeability, we'll see that these are extensions of this idea of God being infinite that really ties back ultimately to where we started several sessions back, that God is pure existence. And as pure existence, he's good and perfect. And so when we come to those conclusions, it naturally follows from that God is infinite. And as an infinite being, the only thing that is proper for us to do is worship him, to bow down at his altar. And when we come to his presence in Holy Eucharist and we see the priest elevate the host and we say, "My Lord and my God," that is the way we should come to him, because he is so utterly unlike us. Thank you.